This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter. I welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. And the birthday boy for April 27th is this man. Yes, he is a fantastic player, one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history when the NBA had its 50th season. But anyway, this guy is very underrated, and he should be celebrated. This is George the Iceman Gervin. He'll turn 69 today. He was an ABA and NBA star. In the ABA for the Virginia Squires and would play for San Antonio and Chicago in the NBA. All 14 of his combined ABA and NBA seasons, he scored at least 14 points a game and finished with an ABA career average of 26.2 a game. Pretty good, don't you think? George Gervin would play in college first for Long Beach University, but he had culture shock that he decided to return home to Detroit. He would transfer to Eastern Michigan University and do pretty well as a sophomore forward and all that. George Gervin had a bad temper because in an NCAA matchup against Roanoke, Gervin punched a player. He was suspended for the following season and was removed from Eastern Michigan. And he could have played for the Olympic teams, but the invitation was withdrawn because of his thing. So he played 1 year for Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan is not really known as being a good school for any sport, college sport. Well, they're in the Mid-American Conference for one, but Eastern Michigan. Who else is good from Eastern Michigan? Earl Watson or whatever his name is? No way. Anyway, so Gervin played in the Continental Basketball Association, which is a minor league system, for the Pontiac Chaparrals. But he was spotted by the vice president of basketball operations for Virginia of the ABA, the competitor of the NBA, by the name of Johnny Kerr. Kerr would sign Gervin to the Squires. Unfortunately, his tenure in Virginia was short-lived. Virginia had bad finances, and they had to start trading their best players for money to stay alive. They had to trade Julius Erving and Sven Natar for stuff like that. Gervin was actually sold to the San Antonio Spurs for $228,000. The ABA wanted to block the trade because the Squires were holding a fire sale, but the court sided with the Spurs. I think Virginia needed to stay alive. So basically he went to San Antonio. And yes, they were an ABA team. People forget about that. So anyway, Gervin was actually eligible for the 74 NBA draft, and Phoenix signed him with the 40th pick, but Gervin decided to play in the ABA and play for San Antonio. Phoenix could have done decently with him. But anyway, the Spurs basically became, with Gervin, they became from a defensive-oriented team into a fast-breaking team that basically played schoolyard basketball. The Spurs would never win an NBA playoff series with Gervin there, but basically their high-power offense made them attractive to the NBA and the attendance figures. So they were part of the 76 ABA-NBA merger. And the Spurs looked pretty good and all that. So the Spurs went into the NBA. George Gervin would win the NBA title, the scoring crown, in 78, beating David Thompson narrowly, 27.2 points a game to 27.1. Thompson put up 73 points in the final game of the regular season to try to get the title. But Gervin scored 63 points in the last game of the regular season. So basically he had it. That scoring crown was in hand. He sat out the fourth quarter. He could have scored more. I think he would have scored 80 if he was allowed to. The Spurs actually were part of the 78-79 squad. They were second in the Eastern Conference. Hold on a minute. The Eastern Conference. Aren't they a Western Conference team? Yeah, but things in those seasons were weird and backwards. San Antonio was an Eastern Conference team, and Chicago was a Western Conference team by proxy. So basically San Antonio and Chicago basically, I think, swapped in a way. So anyway, the Spurs actually were close to getting to the 79 NBA Finals. They were up 3-1 against Washington in the conference finals, but they collapsed. Their second best player, Larry Keon, would become a free agent signed with Chicago. But man, the Spurs almost went to the NBA Finals as the Eastern champion against the Seattle Supersonics, if memory serves me right. Yeah. Gervin was committed to the Spurs despite the fact that he kept getting playoff eliminated and all that. He didn't show frustration towards his teammate. And basically, that's why he was named the Iceman. He actually got 4 more scoring titles after his original one. Gervin actually had the most scoring titles, 5 of any guard in league history before MJ did it. So anyway, the Spurs looked good in 82 and all that. They got to the conference finals, but the LA Lakers were waiting for them and swept them easily. The Spurs decided to draft some high-scoring guards away from things and traded for Artis Gilmore, who was a good center, to take some pressure off Gervin. And the Spurs were a good contender, second best team in the Western Conference. But the Lakers got them again, despite it only taking 6 games this time, not 4. Gervin was basically there. So Gervin was traded before the 86 season, 85 to the Chicago Bulls. Basically, San Antonio's new head coach, Con Fitzsimmons, didn't really like him. And basically, Gervin wasn't happy about it. Ironically, people forget that George Gervin actually ended up playing on the same team as Michael Jordan. People forget about that in 1986. So Gervin played with Jordan. MJ was not too happy about the trade. Gervin was effective. He had a 16 points per game thing and played in every game in the regular season. The Bulls were 22 games below 500, but they still got number 8. The number 8 seed. It would take on the Boston Celtics. Gervin would not play much in the playoffs against the Celtics, despite Michael Jordan, putting up a 63-point game against the Celtics. He decided to play in Europe and did pretty well for himself and all that. His trademark move was the finger roll and all that. Gervin's number was retired by the Spurs, obviously. Why wouldn't he? He was basically the best Spurs player of all time before Duncan and David Robinson came by. He actually retired with the most blocks by a guard in NBA history, which is weird. He was a guard with blocks and all that. Gervin, unfortunately, did not make an NBA or ABA championship finals. Sucks. George Gervin has a wife and 3 children. Their eldest child played for the Harlem Globetrotters. So, yeah. So, in 1,060 regular season games, he did pretty well. 25.1 points a game. He was pretty good. In the playoffs, the Spurs come so close, but basically they fell short. Especially in 1979. They had a chance to get to the NBA Finals, and they choked a 3-1 series lead in the conference finals. Unforgivable. Despite Gervin's 26.5 points in the full season. Pretty good, don't you think? He was cool as ice. Obviously, he's the Iceman. And very underrated in San Antonio Spurs fans. I'm Jeff Diamond. Ado.